This is real, and this is for, Australia, the whole of Australia. All I can think about is my children that I haven't seen in a very long time. And this is for them.
It's had a really huge impact on your family. You're not able to look after your kids at the moment.
I haven't been working. I'm a single mum. It's not easy.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And that was single mum Ramona, one of 700 COVID patients hospitalised in Australia at the end of last month, who, along with two others in Sydney's Concord Hospital, was keen to warn people of the dangers of COVID by sharing heartbreaking stories about their illness from their hospital beds.
So please get vaccinated. I wish I did it beforehand.
Shortness in breath, something attacking the lungs. It was harsh.
Footage of those patients, identified only by their first names, was recorded by Dr Lucy Morgan and released by New South Wales Health and made it onto all the major networks, including ABC News, 10 News First and 7 News. But soon, people on social media were wondering if the New South Wales Health video was actually a fake. And among the sceptics was former One Nation Senator Rod Cullerton, whose post received thousands of likes, and another former Senator, David Lyon-Helm. And one intrepid TikToker who went digging was able to reveal...
I found all 3 actors. Now, how can this be coincidental?
Yes, all 3, including Ramona, were supposedly paid crisis actors who did not have COVID at all. And another internet sleuth then set out to prove it, ringing Concord Hospital to show that Ramona Coury was not a patient there.
Hello, is this Concord Hospital?
Yes, can I help you?
Hi, it's John Curry. I'm just looking for my wife.
Patient?
Ramona Curry.
I just can't see anyone with that surname.
Well, bingo. That video, which TikTok only removed today, had nearly 800,000 views. And elsewhere on social media, other punters were getting outraged by what they saw as TV's fake news.
How stupid and outright deceptive is Channel 9?
Phoned the hospital. She is not a patient at all. More lies on our TV.
So, is Ramona a crisis actor pretending to have COVID for New South Wales Health? No, of course she's not. As New South Wales Health made clear, the patient's name is not Ramona Coury, but Ramona Al-Nasha, who is a pharmacy worker. And as you can clearly see, they are 2 different people, despite the fact that both are women and both have dark hair. And as for the 2 male patients, well, we're happy to tell you they are not crisis actors either. As actor and comedian Mitch Garling, who was outed online as COVID patient Osama Ahmad, said on Instagram...
Turns out that people are using my photo and my Star Now profile, saying that I am an actor sitting in a hospital pretending to have COVID. Look, I am an actor, but not pretending to have COVID. Not that. Just doesn't even look like me, has a beard, that's it.
It is amazing what people will believe, isn't it? And even we have had viewers asking, is it true? And why haven't the mainstream media covered this? But it's not just fun and games for the COVID conspiracists, because the hospital told Media Watch...
It has been highly distressing for Dr Morgan and the patients to see their powerful messages undermined by these baseless and dangerous accusations and to have their credibility questioned. Staff in Concord Hospital's intensive care unit have also received multiple intimidating phone calls from members of the public over this matter.
It is the last thing our exhausted health workers need. And it's not much better for the rest of us, relying on people to take COVID seriously and get the jab if we're ever to win back our freedoms. But now, to the Press Council, which has handed down a damning judgment against The Australian over its relentless campaign on transgender issues that it's been running since mid-2019, with stories like this.
Warnings over surge in youth transgender cases.
Adults fail by giving in to trans teenagers.
Gender change is no fix for autism.
Those are just 3 of the 45 articles, mostly written by roving editor Bernard Lane, which the Press Council was asked to rule on. And the APC duly found the Australian guilty of breaching 3 key principles to ensure accuracy, to ensure fairness and balance, and to avoid substantial distress or prejudice. The complaint was filed by Dr Michelle Telfer, head of the gender clinic at Melbourne's Royal Children's Hospital since 2012, who spoke to the ABC's Australian Story in May about the Australians' tireless campaign.
From August 2019 to the current time, the Australian newspaper has written nearly 50 articles about me and my work. So the newspaper is inferring that clinicians like me are harming children, that it's experimental, that the care is novel, and that they're potentially mentally ill and they're not really trans.
Media Watch also found the Australians' campaign disturbing right from the start, and I took aim at it 2 years ago. The Australian has written no less than 18 stories on gender since the 7th of August, or more than one a day. And apart from a handful on cricket's new transgender policy, written by the sports writers, they're almost all full of fear and warnings.
They're castrating children.
Fears grow for trans kids.
Transgender project out of balance.
One of our concerns was the critics the Australian was relying on, like Professor John Whitehall, a former deputy president of Fred Nile's Christian Democrats, who confessed to never having met a transgender patient. And William Malone, a conservative Christian doctor from Idaho who specialises in diabetes. And Victoria's Health Minister echoed that criticism.
The commentators that the Australian chose to highlight in its campaign did not bring any credibility in this specialist field of paediatrics. I thought it was ill-advised and it needed to stop.
Telfer's 42-page complaint to the Press Council also objected to the repeated use of sources without relevant expertise, plus inaccurate and unfair reporting, and distress caused to transgender young people and their families. And on Friday, the Press Council upheld several of Dr Telfer's complaints, noting that the paper's relentless attacks on her were unwarranted.
The public interest did not justify the extent of references to the complainant in so many of the articles, or implying that the healthcare practiced at the Royal Children's Hospital Gender Service is out of step with mainstream medical opinion.
All in all, it is a fair whack for the Australian. So, has it expressed remorse? Far from it. Instead, it hit back in this editorial.
Press deserves the right to explore difficult topics.
In which it pledged to carry on doing much as it pleases, claiming that hurt feelings were at the heart of Dr Telfer's complaint and the ABC ruling, and arguing that the judgment was, in fact, largely favourable, in that the Press Council, quote, defends much of our reporting, partly upholds a complaint, and dismissed claims of inaccuracy, while adding,
on the most substantial issue of public interest, the APC ruled in our favour.
That was on the matter of whether it was justifiable for the paper to have caused distress and prejudice to transgender kids with its fearless reporting. The Australian then went on the attack, suggesting that the Press Council was wrong-headed and charging that it was, quote, swayed unduly by a concerted campaign by activists, and then adding this sledge.
It is possible to conclude that the complaint is another example of the cancel culture tactics used to stifle debate.
Finally, the paper warned that the APC's criticisms would have a chilling effect on free speech. Meanwhile, despite the Australians' declaration of war on the APC for seeking to moderate its coverage, Dr Telfer was pleased with the verdict, telling Media Watch,
this is a big win for everyone who believes that the truth and the facts matter. We must continue to insist that the reporting on trans issues be accurate, fair and balanced. The rights, health and well-being of the trans community depend on it.
Let's hope Dr Telfer's optimism is justified. But, as we've often noted, the Press Council's only real power is the power to shame. And in this case, the Australian appears to be shameless. But now, to 2GB's Ray Hadley, who has topped Sydney's radio ratings again with a 20% audience share.
The ratings have come and gone. There'll be no celebration. We've got nothing to celebrate because too many people are doing it tough at the moment.
So why do the punters love him so much? Well, Ray stands for common sense and law and order, and he doesn't hold back. And in June, he was in fine form when he savaged a court's decision to give bail to a 30-year-old man charged with serious assault.
3 men charged after alleged attack on police in Griffith.
The man had allegedly punched 2 police officers, including a female probationary constable, and put them both in hospital.
The male officer suffered severe cuts to his head and chin requiring stitches, and the female officer sustained injuries to her head.
And Ray was furious because the court had allowed the alleged attacker out on bail.
You can't believe this. It was done by a registrar, a woman. Now, the registrar's name is Wendy Howard. I don't know anything about Wendy Howard except what I'm reporting here.
Ray had not been in court in Albury for the hearing via video link, but he did claim to know what happened next.
Now, the prosecutor, during the hearing on bail before this registrar, tried to have the body-worn video played and the photos of the injury handed over to the officers. The registrar replied, "I'm declining to watch or see them as it's only a bail determination." Well, wouldn't you want to look at what the bloke allegedly did to the two coppers before you gave the bloke bail?
You would have thought so, especially when the prosecutor is asking you to. And according to Ray, the police were livid.
Now, the Police Association are up in arms. I suspect Mick Fuller's up in arms, the Police Commissioner in New South Wales, and the coppers in Griffith.
And Ray was angry too, and he wasn't going to let it go. So, 2 days later, he laid into Howard again, repeating the charge that she had failed to do her job.
The registrar, inexplicably, on the long weekend, gives that bloke bail and refuses the request from the prosecutor to show body-worn camera footage of what happened.
And then Ray, as he likes to do, offered her some free advice.
Wendy Howard in the Albury Local Court. It'd be best served for everyone if Wendy just dealt with other matters apart from attacks on police based on her performance over the course of the weekend.
And that was that. Another voiceless victim publicly humiliated in Ray Hadley's court of law. Until last week, when Registrar Howard from Albury gave Ray his comeuppance in the form of a comprehensive on-air climb down.
In June, I criticised the registrar of the Albury Local Court called Wendy Howard because I'd been told that during a bail hearing she'd refused to watch footage from police body-worn cameras. Since then, we've been made aware and accept the Registrar Howard didn't refuse to watch the footage. She wasn't asked to watch it at all. The word I got was wrong, so I retract my comments about Registrar Howard and apologise to her for the hurt and embarrassment and distress it may have caused her.
They don't get much better than that. And if you're guessing it was dictated by the lawyers, who were also demanding thousands of dollars in compensation, you'd be right. You see, the court registrar was never asked to view the body cam footage, and it was never offered up by the police prosecutor. So Ray got his facts wrong. And to make matters worse, Albury Local Court tells Media Watch that neither Hadley nor anyone at 2GB contacted the court to check. We asked Nine why and how much it paid to settle the matter. It declined to comment. And finally, to the continuing battle over our closed state borders, which has left hundreds of people cut off from their homes or loved ones. And on Sky News recently, Chris Kenny found yet another sad victim separated from his family by COVID travel restrictions.
I want to cross to Perth now and talk to someone about how these hard borders affect people every day. Daniel Deacon is a pilot operating in Western Australia. Thanks for joining us, Daniel. Tell us about that border. You're working in the West, you have family on the other side of the country. Just how much uncertainty does this create for people in Western Australia?
The answer? A lot. And as an apparently grounded pilot forced into exile, Daniel was suffering more than most.
So I've been over in Perth for 14 months, and you know, the separation and not being able to go home for such a long period of time in my own country, you know, is something I still struggle to understand.
As to why Daniel couldn't go back to his family, given there's nothing to stop people in Western Australia flying back east, that wasn't made clear. And was his name actually Daniel or Dean, as Sky's graphic suggested? Well, no matter, because Dean, or Daniel, was speaking Chris Kenny's language by branding the WA Premier a lockdown-loving tyrant.
Why isn't there more backlash against that in Western Australia?
Absolutely. You know, the people of West Australia and, you know, even our newspaper, The West Australian, people worship the ground Mark McGowan walks on, and people just lap up this alarmism, the fear of COVID.
And Kenny, of course, couldn't agree more.
There's far too much alarmism. We're going to have to leave it there, Dean. Thanks for joining us and good luck. It was good to get your perspective on that. But we've got the Federal Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, waiting for us in Canberra.
Yes, and that was time's up for Dean, not Daniel, because the Treasurer was on the line, although Kenny then put the Perth pilot's concerns directly to him.
You might have caught a bit of that from Dean Deacon in Western Australia. You must be so frustrated at the hard borders in Queensland, in South Australia, in Western Australia.
He was frustrated, just like Dean/Daniel, whose sad story was amplified across the airwaves and across the News Corp network of sites.
People in Western Australia lap up McGowan's alarmism.
But it's not just the pilot's name that has Sky confused, because it seems there are some holes in Deacon's story. Multiple viewers contacted MediaWatch calling him a fraud. He's not in Perth, they say, and he's not a pilot. And the cross that Sky said was from Perth came, we believe, from a suburb of Melbourne, where Deakin apparently lives with his family, not separated from them. So, is that right? Well, the electoral roll has Daniel Deakin located in Melbourne, and his social media puts him there too, with photos showing him with his family within the last year. And his CV, oddly enough, has no mention of his ability to pilot a plane in his long list of skills. So, was Sky duped? It certainly looks like it. We tried our best to contact Daniel to confirm this, but he went to ground, locking his Facebook and Twitter accounts and ignored our messages. So why on earth would he do it, and how did they find him? Seems Sky saw a social media post about being stranded in Perth, and he has attacked COVID expert advice in the past, as in this tweet in reply to a Sky story.
I'm not taking economic advice from an epidemiologist.
News Corp has now scrubbed the video from Sky News and all the articles from the internet. And a few hours ago, Chris Kenny confessed.
Last month, by the way, I spoke on air for a couple of minutes to a man claiming to be a pilot in Western Australia, complaining about that state's border closures. The ABC has alerted us to questions around this man's story. We've tried to put those questions to him, but we've been unable to contact him so far, unfortunately. So we've now dropped that interview from our website.
Really, it could happen to anyone. So trust no one and check. That stranded pilot in Perth may just be a punter having some fun at your expense. That's all from us tonight. There's more on our website, including a statement from Concord Hospital and a link to that Press Council ruling. And don't forget Media Bites every Thursday on your favourite social media platform. But for now, until next week, goodbye.